The matchup between Team USA and New Zealand began as many expected, a routine game favoring the Americans on paper. However, as the evening progressed, the focus shifted from the final score to the specific impact of Caitlin Clark. Her entry into the game altered the offensive rhythm almost immediately. While many players require time to find a rhythm, Clark's presence often dictates the pace from her first possessions. Against New Zealand, the spacing and tempo of the Team USA offense changed fundamentally.
Fans have been great. Fans that have come from America have been awesome. So anytime you get to put this jersey on, I think it's a really fun thing. You take a lot of...
Rather than looking for her own shot early, Clark focused on reading the defensive rotations. Professional playmakers often control a game without high-scoring totals. On the opening possessions, Clark prioritized ball movement, utilizing quick passes to find open looks in the corner. When New Zealand's defense collapsed to stop her drives, she found lanes through traffic to set up easier shots for her teammates. New Zealand entered the contest with a strategy designed to disrupt Clark's influence. Recognizing her shooting range and passing ability, they applied pressure well beyond the three-point line to force the ball out of her hands early in the shot clock. For the opening minutes, this aggressive coverage proved effective, making possessions difficult and uncomfortable. However, extended pressure often creates vulnerabilities behind the primary defender. Clark identified these openings, using a series of pivots and quick passes to split the defense. When the pressure remained high, she utilized a hesitation move to create space for a deep three-pointer. The successful shot forced New Zealand into more rapid and often disorganized defensive rotations. Once a defense begins to react out of necessity rather than strategy, the offensive dynamic changes. Throughout her career, Clark has demonstrated an ability to thrive as the tempo rises and the defensive structure breaks down. Against New Zealand, this was evident during a sequence where she manipulated a screen at the top of the key, waiting for the defense to shift before delivering a cross-court pass for an open three-pointer. In another instance, she navigated a double team in the paint, spinning away from the pressure to find an open teammate with a no-look pass as the defense collapsed. This level of floor control influenced the entire roster. Knowing the ball would reach them in rhythm, teammates cut more aggressively to the basket and shooters moved with more confidence. The Team USA offense moved with greater purpose, dictated by Clark's ability to manipulate New Zealand's defensive positioning. Once the New Zealand defense overcommitted to stopping her passing lanes, the perimeter opened up. Noticing a defender sagging back to prevent a drive, Clark converted a long-range shot from well beyond the arc. The reaction from the bench underscored the shift in momentum. The defense faced a recurring dilemma: pressure her high and risk the pass, or drop back and allow the deep shot. By the second half, Clark was dictating every major possession. In one sequence, she utilized a screen to create a mismatch, drew a help defender in the lane, and assisted on a perimeter three-pointer. On the following possession, seeing the defense stay home on shooters, she drove directly to the basket to finish the play herself. The impact of the performance was measured more by influence than scoring totals. Clark's presence forced defensive rotations toward her side of the floor, creating wider driving lanes and more frequent open looks for her teammates. Even without the ball, her positioning forced help defenders to hover closer than usual, altering the geometry of the court. Late in the game, a transition sequence summarized the performance. Following a New Zealand miss, Clark secured an outlet pass and immediately pushed the pace. She drew two defenders toward the top of the key before firing a pass to a teammate for an easy layup before the defense could reset. The play highlighted her ability to identify opportunities before the defense could react. By the final minutes, the analysis of the game centered on Clark's ability to control the pace. Her performance demonstrated a combination of court vision, shooting range, and the instinct to exploit defensive weaknesses. This game served as a technical demonstration of how Clark manages an offense, relying on a diverse skill set to maintain control from start to finish. For Team USA, the performance was a reminder that Clark's impact does not rely on a single skill, but a combination of shooting, passing, and leadership on the floor. As she continues to settle into this role, the ability to dictate the flow of the game remains her most significant contribution to the roster. One possession at a time, the game was not merely being played, but systematically controlled. The technical shifts observed in the matchup against New Zealand underscore a broader evolution in how high-volume playmakers influence international play. When Clark first took the floor, the primary change was not found in the scoreboard, but in the relocation of defensive assets. In traditional international sets, defenses often prioritize protecting the paint and forcing outside shots. However, Clark's reputation necessitated an immediate abandonment of those principles. New Zealand's coaching staff opted for a full-court pressure scheme, a tactical choice designed to wear down a lead guard over 40 minutes. This forced the game into a high-variance environment where every dribble was contested. By picking her up 90 feet from the basket, the defense attempted to burn clock and limit the time available for Team USA to set up their half-court offense. This pressure, while initially disruptive, created a specific kind of spatial vacuum. Because New Zealand defenders were positioned so high up the court, The traditional secondary line of defense was forced to step toward the timeline to provide cover. This adjustment left the baseline vulnerable, a structural weakness Clark identified within the first 3 possessions. Her ability to navigate this pressure relied on a series of technical escape dribbles and lateral movements that forced the primary defender to over-rotate. Once the first line of defense was breached, the entire New Zealand scheme entered a state of recovery. In high-level basketball, recovery mode is a reactive state where defenders are no longer following a set plan, but are instead chasing the ball. Clark's management of these sequences demonstrated a high degree of poise, as she remained focused on the secondary rotations rather than the immediate pressure in her face. The specific geometry of her passing in the first half warrants a closer technical examination. On several occasions, Clark utilized what is referred to in scouting reports as a look-off pass. By fixing her eyes on a shooter in the corner, she would draw the attention of the help-side defender, only to fire a bounce pass to a cutter moving through the lane. This manipulation of defensive sightlines is a hallmark of elite court vision. Against New Zealand, these passes were delivered with high velocity, reducing the time defenders had to close the gap. The accuracy of these deliveries meant that her teammates received the ball in their shooting pocket, allowing for a seamless transition from catch to release. This efficiency in ball placement is often the difference between a contested shot and an open look, and it served as the catalyst for Team USA's offensive surge. As the game moved into the second quarter, the physical toll on the New Zealand backcourt became evident. The strategy of applying constant pressure requires a high level of cardiovascular output, and as the pace increased, the defensive closeouts began to slow. This provided Clark with the half-step of space needed to initiate her own scoring. The transition from facilitator to scorer was not abrupt, but rather a calculated response to the defense's growing fatigue. When the New Zealand guards began to sag off her to prevent the drive, they inadvertently conceded the very thing they had spent the first 10 minutes trying to stop: her perimeter shooting. The first deep three-pointer she converted was a direct result of this defensive compromise. It was a shot taken from a distance that many professional teams consider non-functional, yet for Clark it remained within her standard operating range. The psychological impact of such range cannot be overstated in a professional reporting context. When a player successfully converts shots from 30 feet, it forces the opposing coach to rethink their entire defensive philosophy in real time. New Zealand was forced to choose between 2 equally problematic options: continue the exhausting full-court pressure, or drop into a zone that Clark could systematically dismantle with her passing. They chose to stay aggressive, but the precision of her ball handling allowed her to split double teams at the top of the key. These splits often led to 4-on-3 advantages for Team USA, where Clark's decision-making remained nearly flawless. Whether it was a lob to the post or a kick out to the wing, the ball was consistently moved to the highest percentage scoring area. Further analysis of the game film shows that Clark's influence extended to the defensive end of the floor as well, though in a more subtle manner. Her ability to secure defensive rebounds allowed her to immediately transition into a one-person fast break. This eliminated the need for an outlet pass and kept the New Zealand defense from getting set. In international basketball, the transition phase is often where games are won or lost, and Clark's ability to push the ball at full speed while keeping her head up forced the defense into constant retreat. This constant forward pressure led to several early offense opportunities where Team USA scored before New Zealand could even cross the half-court line. This relentless pace eventually broke the game open, turning a competitive contest into a demonstration of offensive efficiency. The second half of the matchup saw a shift in how Team USA utilized Clark in their set plays. Instead of simply letting her create off the dribble, the coaching staff began using her as a decoy in off-ball screening actions. This utilized her gravity, the tendency for defenders to stay glued to her even when she doesn't have the ball. By running Clark through a series of staggered screens, Team USA forced multiple defenders to track her movement, which inadvertently opened up the middle of the floor for other scorers. This tactical use of her presence allowed the offense to maintain its high scoring rate even when Clark was not directly recording assists or points. It was a clear indicator of how her mere presence on the hardwood changes the mathematical probabilities for a defense. In the final period, Clark's control of the game reached its peak. The sequence where she navigated 2 defenders near the key before finding a teammate for a layup was indicative of her functional intelligence on the court. She did not just react to the defense, she anticipated their movements. By slowing her pace just enough to draw the defenders in, she created the very opening she intended to exploit. This level of manipulation is rare in international play, where the physicality of the game often overrides technical nuance. Yet Clark remained unfazed by the contact, using her frame to protect the ball and her vision to locate the open man. The statistical reality of the game against New Zealand reinforces the narrative of a total takeover. While traditional box scores track points and assists, they often miss the hockey assist, the pass that leads to the pass that results in a score. Clark was responsible for dozens of these sequences, ensuring the ball touched the hands of every player in a position to score. This selfless approach fostered a sense of cohesion within the Team USA roster that was palpable to those watching. The bench reaction mentioned earlier was not just about the difficulty of her shots, but about the energy she injected into the team's overall play style. When a leader consistently makes the right basketball play, it simplifies the game for everyone else on the court. Looking at the broader implications of this performance, it becomes clear that Clark's style of play is highly adaptable to the international game. The FIBA court, with its slightly different dimensions and rules, often challenges players who rely strictly on athleticism. However, Clark's game is built on fundamentals, spatial awareness, and shooting mechanics that translate across any environment. Against New Zealand, she demonstrated that her collegiate success was not a product of a specific system, but of a unique skill set that remains effective against professional, internationally trained defenders. Her ability to absorb information about a defense and adjust her strategy mid-game is a trait usually reserved for 10-year veterans. The strategic implications of Clark's performance against New Zealand extend beyond the immediate box score and into the realm of international scouting protocols. For years, the standard defensive blueprint against high-scoring guards involved icing the pick and roll, a tactic where the defender forces the ball handler toward the sideline to neutralize the middle of the floor. However, Clark's ability to deliver accurate passes with either hand makes this traditional strategy high risk. Against New Zealand, when the defense attempted to force her toward the boundary, she utilized her height and high release point to fire skip passes to the opposite wing. This forced the weak side defenders to cover more ground than is typically required in a standard defensive rotation. The logistical strain of covering that much territory eventually leads to defensive breakdowns, as even elite athletes cannot consistently bridge the gap between the paint and the far perimeter in the time it takes for a Clark pass to arrive. This leads to a discussion on the technical nature of the spacing revolution that accompanies Clark's presence on the floor. In a typical offensive set, the defense is tasked with guarding approximately 700 square feet of high-threat territory. When Clark is positioned 5 feet behind the three-point line, that threat zone expands by nearly 30%. This expansion creates a coverage gap that New Zealand struggled to manage. To account for her range, the New Zealand center was often forced to hedge higher than usual, leaving the interior of the defense unprotected. This structural compromise allowed Team USA's post players to operate with a freedom rarely seen in international competition. The resulting high percentage shots at the rim were a direct byproduct of the perimeter gravity Clark exerted, proving that her value is often found in the space she creates for others, rather than the shots she takes herself. Furthermore, the mechanics of Clark's shooting off the dribble require a specific technical analysis. Most perimeter players require a set phase where their feet are established before the shot is launched. Clark, conversely, has mastered a one-motion release that allows her to transition from a live dribble to a shooting motion in less than 0.5 seconds. This rapid release makes it nearly impossible for a defender to recover once they have been outpositioned. Against New Zealand, several of her perimeter attempts were launched before the defender could even raise a hand to contest. This efficiency is not merely a product of practice, but of a deep understanding of defensive timing. By identifying the exact moment a defender shifts their weight to adjust to a drive, Clark utilizes that momentary lack of balance to create her shooting window. It is a psychological game of cat and mouse that she consistently wins by forcing the opponent to commit to a movement first. The impact of this performance on Team USA's internal chemistry is equally significant from a reporting perspective. In a roster filled with high-usage stars, the introduction of a high-volume playmaker can often lead to friction or a lack of offensive flow. However, Clark's willingness to operate as a primary facilitator early in the game established a precedent for ball movement that persisted throughout the contest. By prioritizing the extra pass, she signaled to the rest of the roster that the objective was the most efficient shot, not the most convenient one. This led to a marked increase in off-ball screening and cutting, as players realized that their movement would be rewarded with accurate deliveries. The technical synergy between Clark and the veteran wing players was particularly notable during the third quarter, where a series of backdoor cuts resulted in a 12-2 run that effectively ended New Zealand's hopes of a comeback. When examining the transition from the domestic to the international game, the physical demands of the FIBA schedule must be considered. International tournaments often feature games played on back-to-back days, placing a premium on efficiency and energy conservation. Clark's ability to short-circuit a defense early in the shot clock is a major asset in this context. By creating high-quality shots within the first 8 seconds of a possession, she reduces the physical toll on her teammates who would otherwise have to navigate 20 seconds of grueling off-ball movement. Against New Zealand, Team USA's average possession length was significantly lower than their tournament average, a metric that correlates directly with Clark's decision-making speed. This efficiency allows the team to maintain a higher level of intensity over a longer period, as they are not wasting energy on unproductive offensive cycles. The defensive side of the ball also saw a technical shift during Clark's minutes. While often characterized as an offensive specialist, Clark's communication at the point of attack was instrumental in New Zealand's high turnover rate. By directing teammates into proper defensive positions and identifying New Zealand's set plays before they developed, she functioned as an on-floor coach. Her ability to read the opponent's trigger actions allowed Team USA to jump passing lanes and initiate the fast break. This proactive approach to defense is often overlooked but remains a critical component of her overall impact. It is not just about individual steals, it is about the collective disruption of the opponent's offensive script. As the game entered its closing stages, the focus shifted toward game management. The ability to protect a lead without stagnating the offense. Clark's performance in the final 5 minutes was a demonstration of tactical maturity. Rather than hunting for more points to pad her statistics, she focused on milking the shot clock while still probing the defense for weaknesses. This prevented New Zealand from mounting a late-game surge by limiting their total number of possessions. The technical term for this is freezing the game, and it requires a level of poise that is rare for younger players on the international stage. By keeping the ball in her hands and forcing the defense to foul or concede open shots, she ensured that the outcome was never in doubt. The broader implications for the sport are also worth noting. Performances like the one against New Zealand serve as a catalyst for the positionless basketball movement that is currently reshaping the global game. When a lead guard can rebound like a forward and pass like a traditional point guard, it renders standard defensive assignments obsolete. New Zealand's inability to find a permanent matchup for Clark highlighted this dilemma. When they used a smaller, quicker guard, she used her height to shoot over them. When they switched a larger wing onto her, she used her superior foot speed to get into the paint. This versatility is the hallmark of the modern elite athlete and sets a new standard for what is expected from the lead guard position in the international arena. Finally, the long-term impact on international coaching strategies cannot be ignored. Following this matchup, opposing teams will likely be forced to implement more junk defenses, such as box in 1 or triangle in 2 sets, in an attempt to deny Clark the ball entirely. This in turn will open up even more opportunities for her teammates, as the defense will be playing a man down in most areas of the court. The game against New Zealand was a proof of concept for how Team USA can leverage Clark's unique skill set to break down even the most disciplined defensive units. It was a performance characterized by technical precision, strategic foresight, and an unwavering commitment to the fundamentals of the game. The result of this 40-minute display was a refined understanding of the interplay between individual brilliance and systemic efficiency. Clark's ability to integrate her specific talents into the broader Team USA philosophy without disrupting the established hierarchy is perhaps her most impressive achievement to date. As the team moves forward in the tournament, the data from this contest will be used to further refine their offensive sets and defensive rotations. The New Zealand game will be remembered not just for the highlight reels, but as the moment when the international community had to reckon with the reality of a playmaker who could reshape the geometry of the court at will. Every possession served as a data point, every assist as a tactical lesson, and every shot as a reminder that the standard for excellence in the sport has been recalibrated. The game was an exercise in total basketball control, leaving no doubt that the trajectory of the tournament will be dictated by those who can master the technical nuances Clark displayed so effectively. By the time the game concluded, the technical superiority of the American backcourt led by Clark was the defining story. The final sequences of the game were played with a sense of inevitability. New Zealand's efforts to disrupt the rhythm had been countered at every turn. If they pressured, she passed. If they sagged, she shot. If they doubled, she found the open teammate. This cycle of action and reaction consistently favored Team USA because of Clark's ability to process information faster than the defense could execute its rotations. This cognitive speed is perhaps her most underrated attribute, allowing her to stay several steps ahead of the game's physical flow. As the team prepares for future matchups, the New Zealand game will likely serve as a blueprint for how to integrate Clark into various lineups. The data gathered from this contest shows that the team's offensive rating spikes significantly when she is operating as the primary decision-maker. This isn't just because of her individual talent, but because of the way her teammates respond to her playstyle. The increased cutting, the sharper rotations, and the heightened focus on transition points are all direct results of the Clark effect. It is a systemic shift that turns a talented roster into a highly synchronized unit. The conclusion of the game left observers with a clear picture of what a modern, high-impact playmaker looks like. It is not just about the highlights or the deep shots, though those are the most visible aspects of her game. It is about the subtle management of the shot clock, the precise timing of a pass, and the unwavering confidence to take control when the defense provides even the slightest opening. Against New Zealand, all these elements were present, creating a performance that was as much a technical masterclass as it was a sporting event. The game wasn't just won, it was directed, with Clark serving as the lead architect of every successful offensive possession. This performance will remain a point of reference for how one player can fundamentally change the geometry and the outcome of a game through sheer basketball intelligence and technical execution.